All right. Uh, Bringing a cool match from the ManaTraders Vintage Qualifiers. For context, I'm playing Oath of Druids. I'm playing Sphinx of the Steel Wind and Niv-Mizzet Perun as the main targets. I'm also playing a Slight Tinker package in addition to Sphinx with Damping Sphere and Sorcerer's Spyglass. So this match qualifiers at this point, I believe both of us are either 2-1 or 3-1. Um, don't know what our opponent's playing, but we keep a hand that has Daze, Force of Will, multiple oaths, so we're feeling pretty confident with what we're going to see. Our opponent is on Bazaar into multiple Dredgers and an Icarid, so we know they're on Dredge and not on like a Vengevine deck or something. So we're just going to jam our Oath of Druids here. And this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. Our opponent dredges over a lot of things but doesn't see anything special. We didn't find our Forbidden Orchard, so just keep playing out cards. Our opponent hits a Creeping Chill, has two Icarids that they choose not to bring back. They have a bridge in their graveyard, so that would give us a creature that then triggers Oath. They then hit an Archamoeba, and then choose not to put it into play, which ironically is the first time I ever found out that was a May ability. We continue, play out a third land, play a Narset, dig, find a Ponder. Still not finding any creatures for our Oath. Our opponent dredges over a couple more cards, finally puts the Narcomoeba into play. And so at this point, they're threatening to just sort of Alpha Strike us next turn, or on their next turn. So they get a lot of triggers from their amalgams. They bring back both Icarids. They get the Narcomoeba into play. And then we're kind of just sort of taking 6 here and then waiting to see what they're going to do. So we go to 9. They have multiple Cabal therapies in the graveyard, so they get 4 zombies off their first Cabal therapy, which I then daze. Just on the virtue of I have Mist Up, I have Force. It's going to prevent them from getting information with the first two. I choose not to force the last one. If they're going to name Force, they're going to name Force. Instead, they name Time Walk. It's the correct name because if I hit a creature that's valuable and then Time Walk, it's better. But I don't have it. They have a million amalgam triggers. They only get back to 3 amalgams. And now we get our Oath trigger. So, as I said, I have Sphinx of the Steel Wind, Niv-Mizzet Perun. I think Niv-Mizzet is actually the right hit here, which is what we luckily get. We flip 22 cards into our graveyard to do so. Have 23 left in deck. We're at this point pretty resigned to losing on the next turn, so we need to kind of chain together enough spells to draw 22 cards and ping them down. So Ponder is a good start. None of those cards are good, so we're going to shuffle and bottom. Treasure Cruise is fantastic. So continue to ping our opponent, play out our fast mana. We're going to cruise away a bunch of irrelevant cards in our graveyard, which in the replay, since this moves, mess that up. So we get the cruise, we ping our opponent to 19, we draw 3 cards, ping our opponent 3 more times. We hit Sphinx of the Steel Wind and Tinker. And then we hit Narset again, we find our Brainstorm, that draws us cards and puts cards back, that's great. So we're going to cast our Brainstorm here. I don't know if this is right, but the line I take here is we're going to put the Sphinx back, and then a garbage card on top of it that we don't care about because we're going to redraw it whenever we cast Tinker. And then we're going to crack our Black Lotus for Tinker. Draw a card, which we put back, and then we're going to get the Sphinx into play as well. This is kind of just like a last-ditch effort. The Damping Sphere wasn't going to help us. The Mox wasn't going to help us. So we play a land for the turn. We Ancestral, ping our opponent, draw 4 cards, ping our opponent for 4 more. This is going to put them to 7. We get to play out 2 Moxen. This was actually a mistake here, but I choose to Pyroblast their own Amalgam, which is going to draw me a card, ping them for 1, but it's also going to give them 4 more zombies, and the Amalgam comes back end of turn. I could have easily just targeted anything. I just needed the spell cast. I didn't need to actually kill something. But it leaves our opponent at 6, and basically killing us. But this is where the game sort of gets interesting. I think it'd be very easy to concede here, and I'll be honest, the reason I didn't concede is just kind of out of spite, and it was going to be quick to end regardless. But we throw our Ancient Grudge into the graveyard because it's a spell that we can cast off our Mox Emerald. We let our opponent sort of dredge over whatever they want. In hindsight, this was actually a bad choice. I believe they could have hit another Creeping Chill. And I guess it wasn't a bad choice. We would have had to respond to the Creeping Chill. But they don't. So they get all of their early game triggers again. They have so much damage available. 29, 32, 33, 34, 35, 38, 39. So they're going to swing for 39 here. We're at 7, so obviously that's lethal. Yeah, so they attack. So we're going to Ancient Grudge, targeting our own Mox. Just to get the spell on the stack, draw a card, ping them for 1. We don't have the mana to Flusterstorm, but we are going to be able to Force of Will this. So we Force of Will our own card, just another our own spell, just to draw a card, ping them for 1. We can now Daze it, draw a card, ping them for 1. And so now we have 3 damage triggers on the stack. So they're effectively at 3. We get to Force again, they're effectively at 2. And we draw Gush. And since we have exactly 3 cards left in our deck, that allows us to Gush, pick up both our islands, draw, put them at 2, draw 2 off the Gush, putting us at 0 cards in the library, but not yet dead, with 2 more damage pings, and that sort of gives us the win in game 1, which I honestly thought that it was gone, but it's a lesson to, play to your outs. If I had sort of analyzed the cards I milled over, which included the Time Walk that our opponent was trying to name off the Cabal Therapies, I could have realized that there was enough card draw, and so I decided not to concede because it was going to be over pretty quick anyway, and might as well just try, and it turns out it worked out. Though it's likely not going to work out like that all the time. So going into game 2, this is definitely much more typical of the matchup. So our opponent's going first. We're both going to mulligan. That first hand basically just had no interaction that was relevant against Dredge. Nothing going to keep it when we're going to bring in Ravenous Traps. For context on the sideboarding strategy, I brought in 4 Ravenous Traps and 2 Blazing Archons. So that's kind of where we're sitting at. So this hand has Force, Preordain, Ravenous Trap. It can interact, seems good enough. At first I think I'm going to throw away the DAC, and then I reconsidered because I want to pitch as a Force so I can still Preordain, so I throw away the Mox Jet. Our opponent's turn 1. They lead with Bazaar, which makes sense. They're obviously going to mull to that. And they throw 2 Dredgers into the bin. 2 Dredgers force negation. So we're going to try and trap that. They force, we force back, pitching DAC. And they force again, which is all the cards in their hand. So, they still have Dredgers where we have a Ponder. Not the best, but we're rewarded with drawing another Ravenous Trap. So we lead the Mox, Preordain, don't want either of these cards, and we draw an Oath. Things are looking up for us. We lead out our land, pass the turn. On their upkeep, they're going to Dredge twice with Golgari Thugs, and then have to throw their cards back from the Bazaar. And so that's when we get to strike. So in a second, so now their hand is empty, the Narcomoeba triggers on the stack. We get to Ravenous Trap them. Their graveyard goes away. Narcomoeba can't come into play. They draw for turn, but can't really do anything. They find a second Bazaar, which is pretty good for them. But what isn't good for them is this Bazaar then doesn't find anything practical. So just a third Bazaar, ironically, and a Serum Powder. End of turn, we're going to fetch, find our Trop so that we can run out our Oath. We also find a Veil of Summer, which probably not relevant now, but we brought in just in case there's, for the Cabal Therapies. and because it can win a counter war against Force of Wills. So they're just trying to dump a treasure into their graveyard. They hit a Cobalt Therapy Hollow one, Force of Negation Bridge. So Bridge is nice, but not helpful now. We continue to just rip the best cards possible, find a Sorcerer's Spyglass. So we just run that out. Replay's lagging a little bit. So we're going to run out the Sorcerer's Spyglass, and we get to see their hand, which contains a Hollow one. I don't know why this isn't going. There we go. See their hand in Hollow one, we name Bazaar, so now they can't even Bazaar anymore. So our opponent is really looking for green card plus Force of Vigor. We send a couple turns, sort of just draw pass, because neither of us can do anything. I finally find the Orchard. On end step, we just float a mana to make the creature for them and then pass. We flip Oath. We have our Archons, which we brought in specifically because Dredge can't beat it. And then to add insult to injury, we get to jam a Narset as well in case they can answer the Sorcerer's Spyglass, which, as long as they have a Dredger, doesn't neuter Bazaar, but they don't have a Dredger right now, and so Bazaar's gone. So we've basically cut them off in like 3 or 4 different ways, and our opponent tapped out. And so I thought both of these games were pretty interesting. The first one because it was kind of like a wild, like, Hail Mary that worked out. The second, which we drew very well, and just goes to show how the right interaction can neuter a powerful deck like Dredge. So that's it for this video. Hopefully I will be qualifying. I'm currently 3-1 with 4 matches played, and have a few more to go, and we'll have more content in Vintage. Thanks.